Rise and shine with the Word of God. Wake up Saturday mornings with a purpose. Tune in at 10 a.m. and join Antonia Rahman as she sings and reads the Word of God. The Word of God will give you insight for the purpose in your life. Now here is your host, Antonia Rahman.
Good morning, my friends. Good morning. Hello, 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 everybody. It's time to wake up and dive into the Word of God. Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are awakened. I know it's the 4th of July weekend, so everybody is still, out there going places, having fun with their family and friends. I get it. We had I know some people have a 4-day, because usually when 4th of July is on a Thursday, people will also take off on a Friday. And they'll go places to have fun and do different things. And hey, I can't blame you. And I get it. You got to take advantage of this weather while we have it. Although it's been hot, I know that, people are really enjoying themselves in the beaches, in their pools, going out just to do various activities. So no matter what you're doing, I hope that you're ready to dive into the Word of God, that you're at least taking a break to do that. And if not, you can always come back and hear the replay. So my friends, thank you for joining me this morning. As you know, we are in the book of Job, and we are in chapter 8. And as we are in chapter 8, we are setting up and continuing the conversation that Job's friend Bildad now is saying to him, right? Eliphaz gave his peace of mind. Job responded to his statements. And then now Bildad is now giving his input and response to his own opinion about Job. And, he pretty much has started to say to Job that, he just shouldn't keep talking about these rough words, and that, and how did he think that, God was not going to punish him if he had done something wrong. And he's telling Job, just go ahead and confess your sin. All will be well. You'll be forgiven. And then, God could just start restoring you again. Which that doesn't mean that that's not good advice. But the problem is, Bildad is giving him advice just based on conclusions that he's made for himself based on everything that has happened in Job's life. So we're going to pick it up on verse number 8. And again, we're in the book of Job, chapter 8, and we're picking it up on verse 8. And it says this: For inquire, please, of the former age, and consider the things discovered by their fathers. For we were born yesterday and know nothing, because our days on earth are a shadow. Will they not teach you and tell you the utter words from their heart? Can the papyrus grow up without a marsh? Can the reeds flourish without water? While it is yet green, and not cut down, it withers before any other plant. So are the paths of all who forget God, and the hope of the hypocrite shall perish, whose confidence shall be cut off, and whose trust is a spider's web. Father, thank you so much for this word. Here we go, someone else giving Job advice. And I know that it may not sound so great to Job, this advice, but again, he's just sitting there patiently, just listening to what his friend has to say. And we thank you for the word that you've given us. In Jesus' name, amen. My friends, we've spoken about this already. Our friends are always going to give us their opinion, their suggestions, their recommendation, their remedies of what they think we should do or not do based on our circumstance. And, here Bill, Dad is continuing to talk to Job, after he had already told him a couple of things. So he says to him, "For inquire please of the former age, and consider the things discovered by their fathers." In other words, he said, you should really go back and understand and get a word, get information from your former fathers. Because remember, where they're at right now, Job and his friends, they knew about what had happened at the time of Moses. We spoke about this. They knew what the children of Israel endured. They knew what they faced consequences when they committed sin. So Bildad is saying, you should go back and you should inquire about the things that were discovered by their fathers, the past. We should see by example what was done back then, and what was the right thing to do when you did commit a sin, when you did the wrong. Their forefathers would have traditionally done specific things to give an offering to God about a way out in taking care of being forgiven by God because of the sins they committed. So, Bildad is saying, hey, you should inquire about our former age and consider the things discovered by their fathers, because, back then they knew a lot of good stuff. They were always, seeking God and doing things and, in relationship with God about, what they should be doing or not doing. And there's nothing wrong with him telling him that advice. Like, you should go to your ancestors. You should go to your past family lineage and find out, and consult with them and see what's going on, right? Because there's still elders in this community that have lived out a lot of the things from the past. So he's saying, you should probably just go to them, get their advice, see what input they can give to you, because they're the ones with all the knowledge and understanding. They're the ones that truly know what to do. And that's not bad advice, my friends, because there's times when people will say to us, hey, why did you go speak to your grandfather? Your grandfather has been around this town for so many years, and he knows so much more than we do, right? He has all the knowledge. He's seen everything. He was born back in the day real early. We have our grandparents that were born, back in the, if I was to talk about my grandparents right now, I mean, they're all pretty much deceased, but if they were still alive today, they were born back in my grandmother was actually born in like 1918, and on my mother's side, and then my mother was born a couple of years later, because my mother was born in 1932. So if my grandmother was still alive and could talk, she would tell me about everything she has seen transpire in this world during her lifetime. And I'm sure, how we always say, well, you've seen a lot of changes, I'm sure. We always say to elderly or, more folks that have been around longer, we say, oh, you've seen a lot happen here. You've seen a lot of changes. Like when you go to a neighborhood and you're having a conversation with someone and they say, I remember back in the day, this just all used to be some green land, beautiful green land. And it was just a beautiful sight to look at when I woke up in the morning. Now, years later, all you see is hundreds of buildings, businesses, roadways, right? They tell us those stories. So they've seen changes in what has happened. And then they can give us insight about what the process was like. How did it affect them in their lives? Now that they have a beautiful greenery. Now there's construction and noise happening all the time, right? And then they had to see, the neighborhood just being, expanded. How did that affect them? And now there's, traffic going through the streets now, right? They would have a lot to tell us about that. So this is what Bildad is saying to Job, like, you should go and inquire about them, because, they know all these things, that, their former age, they know everything. And that's not bad advice. It isn't. Technically, if you think about it, it's not bad advice to go to an elder and ask them for help about a situation you're struggling in, right? Because if they may have seen it, gone through it, have an idea about it, they can help you and give you insight and help you make decisions and choices of what you should do while you're in the middle of the same situation. So then he goes, for we were born yesterday and know nothing, because our days on earth are a shadow. In other words, he's just like, we were born yesterday. We really don't know it all. We're still young at heart. We are still learning. We have not really understood or nor apply everything that our forefathers have known and have been able to do, and our days on earth are a shadow. In other words, he's like saying, like, we're just really trying to follow their footsteps, but we're just here. We're just existing. We're a shadow. That's kind of like trying to follow the trajectory of the forefathers, but at the same time, we don't really know much. We're very green. We're still learning. We're still applying ourselves. So maybe what you might want to do is go talk to them, because they can give you greater insight of why you're probably going through what you're going through. Why you have suffered so much, destruction in your life and chaoticness in your life. And now you're struggling, with your body and what's going on with you. Maybe your forefathers could give you insight on those things and see how they can help you. Because, we don't really know it all. We're just existing. Yeah, do we practice some of the things that they've told us in the past? Yeah. Are we really doing it diligently? No. But they know better than we do, right? And he goes, will they not teach you and tell you and utter words from their heart? In other words, he's saying, they can really talk to you from a place of knowing things and really understanding what you're going through. They will tell you and give you advice that is very vital. And they're going to speak to you bluntly. They're going to speak to you very direct. They're going to tell you the truth about things. They're not going to sugarcoat it, because in their hearts, they've already gone through a lot of this. They already know about the past. They already know what a lot of people have encountered and endured. So what we could do is just, if you ask them, they're going to tell you from their heart what they really think that you're experiencing or why you're experiencing, based on their past experience and what they lived out and what they saw other people struggle through. They can give you insight, like from the heart of what they really know. And, elders are always intended to be wise individuals, right? It speaks a lot, in the Bible as well, as about when the young folks used to go and consult with the elders about certain things that they should do or not do. And pretty much this is what Bildad is saying to Job. You should go speak to the older folks about what's going on with you, because they would have better insight to maybe understand why you're suffering, this everything that you're going through. They will speak to you from the heart of maybe what they might discern, because back then also elders had a great way of discerning things, of also being connected to God and knowing and being told, word of knowledge for someone. And, it's interesting, because even though we know that Job himself was a man after God with integrity. He loved the Lord, feared the Lord. He was an intercessor helping his family. It so happens that, in this moment, he's just being discredited of himself. And he's being told, like, you should seek knowledge and wisdom from somebody else that could help you figure out why has happened to you. And it's still happening to you. Now, I'm not going to say that that's not bad advice. That's good advice. In layman's terms today, if we see someone struggling through something, we will then say to them and refer them to someone who could possibly help them, because that person went through the same thing, or that person, had someone in the family who went through it, and they can give insight, right? That's like if you are, all of a sudden, struggling with cancer, and you're really depressed or something, and you're going through your chemo, and this is really like, your hair's falling out. We know the stories of what happens with cancer. Well, someone might say to you, hey, because you had are experiencing this, I had a cousin who went through this. Maybe I can connect you two, so my cousin could give you insight of what they went through, and then they might give you some pointers. They might give you some advice, some ways for you to be able to deal with it. And it's maybe some of the things that they did to help them, through the struggle, And there's nothing wrong with that. That's like good advice to give someone or connect someone who can have, a common understanding of something. So my friends, this is not bad advice that Bildad is giving him. He's just like, hey, this is what I think you should do, right? There's nothing wrong giving this advice. It's good advice. And then he says, can the papyrus grow without a marsh? Can the reeds flourish without water? In other words, he's now giving him like an illustration, example of something. Like, in other words, he's saying, can the papyrus grow up without a marsh? In other words, can this plant, the papyrus, which is a green like grass that grows, and it has a plant in it, and it grows by the marsh. And the marsh is like, if you ever go to areas where there's like, it looks like swampland, or it looks like it's just an area with some water around it that surrounds it, and then the plants are growing between it. We've seen that a lot. We've seen it in movies. We've seen it in our own lives, where we'll be somewhere and we're like, oh wow, that looks like a swamp land or something. But then do you see that there's a lot of green grass and green plants and not flowers, but it has a bud of a flower, but it's a different type of flower. And then you could see that it's growing among it. So he's asking him, like, can this grow without the marsh? So can these plants actually grow without this surrounding that's required for it to be sustained and maintained? And he goes, can the reeds flourish without water? In other words, can these flowers, these green, tall grass flowers, plants, can they really survive without the water? They can't, my friends, right? So he's asking him, he's giving him an illustration. Look, can these plants really survive in this environment if they don't have water? Because those plants must have water all the time because of the weather. So if it's very, very hot, let's say, then that plant is going to be sustained by the continuous water that is hitting the root of that plant and is constantly surrounding it, right? Those plants are meant to survive in a certain environment, in a certain temperature. And if they don't, if they're in a place where it's too cold, they're not gonna survive. If they're in a place that's too hot and they don't have the water to offset it, they're gonna die. Right? So he's giving him this illustration. And he goes, while it is yet green and not cut down, it withers before any other plant. In other words, while it's still green and flourishing, and it's still not cut down, because, a lot of these plants are cut down and used to make baskets, or some of them are very tough plants, and a little thick, not that thick, but just a little thick. So a lot of people use this to make things with it. That's why sometimes when you look at like some baskets, the way they're made or whatever, and you look, and I'm not talking about fabricated baskets that are made in a factory. I'm talking about like a real, like they cut these plants down and then make real things out of it, whether that's a basket or something else, or some type of mat or something. Sometimes when you look at a mat, like I just threw away a mat not too long ago in my development, where I said to the manager, I said, can I throw this mat out? Because you could tell it had already gone through its like years of being used, but it has some type of like plant base on it that was kind of like looked like a basket type. And I know you may have seen this in stores, like in Big Lots, Walmart, Target, all these stores. And so I'm learning and understanding the scripture about like that those plants are used for a specific purpose, and if they don't survive, they're not going to serve anyone. They're not going to serve anything. So he's explaining to them that they can actually wither before any other plant. So that those plants will die, wither, be done away with, if they don't have all the things that he mentioned about, the marsh, or the water. Because if your nutrients for a plant are required. Now, most of the time when we buy plants, you and I, sometimes we might buy a house plant, right? And then we make sure that it's, we put it on a shelf or by a window so some sunlight can go onto it. And then also we give it water, right? And sometimes we'll clip off like the dead ends or whatever, because the plant needs to continue to survive. Now, outside my house, I have some plants. Minor plants, they're just really like aloe vera plants and another plant. But I've got to always water them, and I've got to make sure they're in sunlight, but they can't be in too much scorching sunlight, especially like it's been so hot these past couple of days in California. I still have to, look at those plants and make sure that, they're getting the nourishment that they need, but then also that they're not dying because of the circumstances of the weather and stuff. So when he's telling him about this, he's giving him an illustration about what happens with these plants, what's the circumstance, what they can face, right? And then it says, so are the paths of all who forget God. That hits hard. So are the paths of all who forget God. So it gives them the illustrations, the illustration about these plants, what's required, what do they need, how they need to be sustained. And then he says to him, so are the paths of all who forget God. In other words, I'm telling you this illustration about the plants, Job, because if these plants are not giving nourishment, if they're not surrounded by the things that they really need, they're going to wither away and die. And they're going to be done away with. And that happens to people too, who do not stay in the path of God or forget about God. So now he's telling Job, this is something you may have done. You may have forgotten about God. You may have just decided to not have relationship with him anymore. Something may have happened to you in your relationship with God. And if you've forgotten about God, or have not been diligent in following God and his commandments and being upright, righteous the way you've always been with him, well, you could face something like this, right? If God's not nourishing you, if God is not by your side, if he's not surrounding your life like the marsh does with all of these plants, and he's not giving you nourishment for your body, your spirit, and your soul because you forgot about him, or you're not talking to God anymore, well, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to face consequences like these plants would face it. And you wither away, meaning everything just starts to die off, right? So he says that to him, and then he goes, and the hope of the hypocrite shall perish. Now, I don't know about you, but if someone was in my house and they started to insinuate that I'm not in the path of God's position for my life, and that they're accusing me of being a hypocrite. In other words, like knowing that I've always been like an intercessor, following God, helping other people. That's very disheartening. Accusatory, and is bluntly like in my face type of thing. And that's from his friend. Now Job's just still listening. He's just listening to what he has to say, right? Because he's accusing Job of being a hypocrite. Because most likely he's like, look, you've always said this to people, don't sin, stay on track, because Job is a prominent man in the community, respected by everyone. He's always helped other people, given advice to other people. And if he has always been that person to give the advice and do the right thing, and then now he's facing this, unfortunate situation in his life, then he's accusing him of being a hypocrite. If he was always telling people do the right thing, stay on the right track, trust God, love God, fear God, follow the commandments, and then now he's suffering his situation, so that's looking at him like, well, obviously you didn't follow your own preaching, you didn't follow your own advice that you gave to other people. You told them one thing, but here you go and you do another, and now you're facing consequences. Man, what an accusation, and what a way to just really throw that in his face, right? Because he's coming up and making up his own assumptions about Job's suffering and why he's suffering. And then he goes, whose confidence shall be cut off. In other words, Job, hey, you on a pedestal, and God just cut it off, knocked it down. You've been cut off. Your confidence, whatever that was, yeah, it's gone now. God has cut it off. Maybe you thought you were too good for God. Maybe you thought that you didn't need God. And, you have your own reservations about God now. Maybe you walked away from God. Maybe you just decided that you could, now that you were a rich man and you had everything you needed, that you didn't need God. He's making all these assumptions, right? Now, I don't know about you again, but if this was someone telling me this, I know that it would irk my bones. And I know I'd be thinking like, the nerve of this person to tell me this. And I'm sure that that's what Job may have been thinking. However, he didn't say a word. He was just listening, right? So, as his friend is telling him all this, and he says, whose confidence shall be cut off, and whose trust is a spider's web. In other words, he's accusing Job of not following God, being in relationship with God anymore, not following God, and that maybe Job, instead of relying on God and trusting in God like he's always done, and being in relationship with God, that he's decided to go do something else. He's doing some other shenanigans, maybe with some other people. And that because that's happened now, that he is like facing consequences. His friend is just making the assumption, right? So here's the thing, my friends. There are many ways that people will always say to us things that they think is what we've done and why we're facing consequences as we're facing it, why we're suffering through the things we're suffering with. But a lot of times, because people don't know all the facts, like Bildad didn't know the facts either, just like Eliphaz didn't know the facts, he's making an assumption. He's giving him an illustration of why he's going through what he's going through. And then he's telling him pretty much like, you must have just walked away from God. You did something against God, and this is why you're facing what you're facing. So whatever high horse you were on, whatever chip on the shoulder you had, where you felt, that you would just, you had it like that, and God cut it off. God decided that maybe you are just too conceited now, too stuck up. There's something about you that doesn't honor God anymore, and now he's making you face consequences, so he cut you off. That's what he's telling him, pretty much. And I know this is very hard words to hear, but at the same time, you got to say to yourself, man, this is deep, because he has 3 friends that come to visit him to supposedly be a support system for him, but they're all telling him their own opinion and telling them what they've concluded already of what he's done, when they don't know all the facts about that God and Satan had a conversation about this, because God knew that Job would never turn away from him, even though Satan told God, yes, he will, because I'm going to destroy him as much as I can. And God said, go ahead, try to destroy him, but don't destroy his life, don't kill him. But go ahead and destroy him. And then Satan first did the whole thing with, doing away with the family, with the building collapsing and him losing all his harvest, losing his employees, they're dying. And then the bitterness now with his wife. And then, he went a step further, Satan, and said, well, I'm going to now affect his body. Because, after I affect his body and he can't be in public and he can't be that prominent man anymore, he's gonna give in. And then that's when Job was attacked on his body, the boils. So here his friend is giving him all this, illustration, and then telling him, hey, the same thing's going to happen to people who don't follow God. The same thing's going to happen to people who walk away from God. The same thing's going to happen to people who feel that, they got it like that now and they don't need God. Now, that's not to say that doesn't happen in life, my friends. There are times when many people walk around saying, well, God gave me all these things now, but thanks, God. Peace out. I don't need you anymore. I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to continue to have this success, but I don't need you by my side. Now, there's been many times that people have done that, and then even in churches, leaders, pastors, preachers, ministers, this has happened, and then all of a sudden you're hearing that there was a major crashing that took place. Something's been exposed. Something happened, right? And I won't say who it is, but recently, if you've been listening to the news, that just recently happened to a pastor, a very prominent pastor that had a mega church just recently. And, that's not to say that he still wasn't seeking God and doing things, but at that time in his life, apparently, he was going through a struggle and a battle, which we all go through. But the fact that it's been hidden all this time and now is being exposed, see, because God will eventually expose everything in the right timing. Whether that is yesterday, in the moment, in the future, later on in years, everything will always be exposed. And then when it is, we have to take responsibility and accountability for those mistakes we have made in our lives. Now, some of you listening to me right now might be thinking, wow, you know what? There's something in my life that I have not confessed, nor does anybody know about, or I never fixed it, or I've done wrong. I got away with something. God will eventually deal with you one day about it. Unless you have a conscious mind and you say, maybe I should just confess it now. Maybe I should ask for forgiveness now. Because you go to sleep with it every day, right? It's part of life. You go to sleep with it every day on your shoulder. And right now, for me, I feel like as we're reading the scripture, Bildad is giving Job a great illustration, and then also insinuating to him of what he thinks Job has struggled because of the way he's been acting or not doing the right thing in front of God's eyes. Now, again, we always talk about that if a friend sees you struggling through something and they know that you've done something wrong, maybe they should have a conversation with you, right? So an example would be, if a brother in church notices that another brother is treating, their wives like a certain way, or yelling or screaming or something, maybe that brother might want to go to the other brother in church and be like, hey dude, how you doing today? Not for nothing, but I overheard this conversation between you and wife. Is everything okay? I noticed your words were a little harsh. I don't know if you realize this, but you insulted your wife in front of the other women. Were you aware of that? There's nothing wrong with having those conversations, because when we're struggling in areas of our lives and we're doing things irrationally, there could be that voice of reason, that good friend that comes to you and say, hey, have you noticed you've been doing this? Have you noticed this has happened? To kind of bring you back on track on making rational decisions as opposed to irrational decisions. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have that conversation. You'll be helping that person. So for Bildad right now, he feels he's helping his friend by telling him this illustration and by telling him like, hey, you know what? Those who do bad things in God's eyes, they don't go unnoticed. Like, they're also going to face consequences. And again, that's not bad advice. It's just that Bildad is, again, coming to his own conclusions because of everything that has happened to Job. Listen, we know the community is talking left and right about Job. We know everybody in town knows what happened to him. We know everybody in town knows he's hiding in his home because he's got a disease on his body. Like, we know that everybody in town is wondering, like, geez, what? This guy lost his children. He lost his livelihood. He lost part of his harvest. He lost his employees. They know the whole story. Like, they know everything that has happened in this town. So, people are talking and coming up with their own conclusions. And that's what Bildad is doing here. There's not, I'm not sitting here saying that we don't sit and decide to come up with our own conclusions, right? Because every day in life, even when I'm working or speaking to my family members and they're telling me about a situation, I come up with my own conclusion of what I think. Hey, maybe have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought if this person may not see it this way? Like, I come up with like my own remedies to them, or opinions, or recommendations, or resolutions, or remedies of how maybe they should handle it, because I'm assuming already maybe how the other side is thinking. Now, in my job and in things I've done in my life, work-wise, I was always trained that I had to think how the other side thinks, right? So for me, when I'm constantly dealing with stuff, I'm always thinking about, how does the other side think? Right? What could they possibly be thinking or strategizing, right? Because I was just trained that way in my job, my different jobs that I had. So now I sit here, though, even though I know I do that in the natural, but I then have to take to the spirit and be like, Lord, I know that I'm just coming up with these assumptions in the natural, but the question now is, what is truly happening in the spirit, right? And obviously, Bildad didn't go to consult with God before he had this conversation, with Job, like Eliphaz did, right? Eliphaz was saying, God gave him a dream. Well, Bildad is just saying, look, I'm looking at this logically, like, what's happened to you, and I think you should just handle this a certain way. You should go back and ask the elders, what's up? Why are you going through this? The elders might tell you, well, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. Obviously you sinned and you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and you might have to take 10 bulls and sacrifice them and bring the blood. Like, you just don't know. Like, they might just give him so much remedy, so much advice of what to do, and Eldad's just expressing himself, his feeling of what he feels, because he feels like, hey, if you have all this, sometimes God will cut down people who have so much confidence about themselves, especially if they're dealing with other things that are not of God. And when we think about that, we can think about it in this way. Like, God has blessed you in so many areas. He has blessed you abundantly, financially. You have everything you need in your life. You have an abundance of a bank account. And then you start now taking that money, and instead of tithing that money, now you're going to go and you're going to start, going to the casino and trying to win more money. Or, you're investing it in something that's not fruitful, right? You're downloading pornography or something on your computer. And these are things that happen, these are things that happen to people in real life. Or, you're just deciding that you're going somewhere where you're not supposed to go, to be putting dollars down somebody's body. So, that's an example of God seeing the abuse of what you've done with the abundance and the blessings He's given you. And something may happen in your life to cut down the abundance you have, because God's got to get you back to basics. God's got to get you back to following Him and trusting Him and knowing that He's your ultimate provider. And whatever He's blessed you with, you can't get an ego about it, and you can't become conceited about it, or have a chip on your shoulder and have all this confidence saying, well, I got it like that now. Thanks, God. I don't need you anymore. God will see all of that. And yeah, there could be a cutting down of whatever's happening with your overly confidence and ignorant and, obnoxious and, all these other things I could say. But, God sees all that. And then, yeah, something could happen. So right now, Bildad is saying, hey, you know what? This is what I think may have happened to you, and I'm just giving you an illustration. So he's generalizing the illustration, but it's still directed to Job of the things that he's saying. So my friends, I don't know about you, but I know that I've been blessed by this. And sometimes, we're learning constantly every day, right? Through the book of Job, Job's patience, his endurance, how he's reacting. So we will continue next week to read still what Bildad continues to tell him. And we'll see what Bildad finally says. Okay, my friends, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your 4th of July weekend. Stay safe out there. And have fun with your family. Love on your family. If you have an opportunity, speak to somebody about God. Speak to them about Jesus. Let them know, how God has impacted your life, how Jesus is the Lord and the anchor of your life. So if you see that someone is struggling or going through a horrible time in their lives, they could be informed about the fact that there is a hope for the future. So I look forward to sharing the word again with you next week. God bless you.
Antonia Roman is the author of Confessions of a Christian Woman, A Journey in Marriage, A New Beginning. In this book, Antonia shares her personal journey in marriage and how she used God's Word to help her overcome verbal abuse. Tune in next Saturday as Antonia Roman continues to dive into the Word of God. The Word of God gives you insight for the purpose in your life.